Every atom in your body has been replaced. Not most of them, not the majority, every single one. The carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood. None of it is the same matter that constituted you 10 years ago. The atoms that made up your cells have cycled through food and air and water and left again, replaced by new atoms that arrived the same way. Your skeleton, which feels like the most permanent thing about you, replaces itself completely roughly every 10 years. Your red blood cells live for about 4 months. The cells lining your stomach are replaced every 5 days. Even your brain, which replaces neurons far more slowly than other tissues and retains some cells for your entire lifetime, is constantly replacing the molecules within those cells, the proteins and lipids and structural components that make them what they are. The matter is almost entirely new, and yet here you are, continuous, recognizable. The same person, as far as anyone is concerned, who existed 10 years ago in a body made of completely different atoms. This is one of the oldest problems in philosophy, and it has never been solved. The ancient Greeks told a story about a ship. The Ship of Theseus was preserved in the harbor of Athens as a monument, the vessel in which the hero had sailed to Crete and returned victorious. As the years passed, the wooden planks began to rot and were replaced one by one with new planks. The mast was replaced, the oars were replaced, the hull was repaired and rebuilt section by section. Eventually, every single part of the ship had been replaced at least once. Was it still the Ship of Theseus? The philosopher Thomas Hobbes added a twist that made the problem harder. Suppose someone had collected all the original planks as they were removed, rotted, old, worn, and used them to build a second ship. Now there are 2 ships, one made entirely of new materials but continuously maintained in the harbor, one made entirely of the original materials but assembled later from the discarded pieces. Which one is the Ship of Theseus? The continuous one or the original material one? Most people have an immediate intuition about this, and most people's intuitions conflict with the intuitions of the person next to them. The reason the problem has survived for 2,500 years is not that it is trivially unanswerable. It is that every attempt to answer it forces you to commit to a theory of what identity actually is, what makes a thing the same thing across time. And every such theory, when examined carefully, produces consequences that are difficult to accept. If identity is continuity of material, then you are not the same person you were 10 years ago, because the material has been replaced. But this creates strange results. It means the ship in the harbor is not the Ship of Theseus from the moment the first plank was changed. It means you became a different person the moment any cell in your body was replaced. Identity would be instantaneous and non-transferable, something that belongs only to this exact configuration of matter at this exact moment. If identity is continuity of form, then the ship in the harbor is the Ship of Theseus because its shape, structure, and function have been continuously maintained. You are the same person you were 10 years ago because the pattern of your organization, the arrangement of your physical and psychological components, has been preserved through continuous replacement. This is more intuitive but creates its own problems. If you are gradually disassembled atom by atom and reassembled elsewhere using different atoms in the same arrangement, would that be you arriving somewhere or a perfect copy of you arriving somewhere while you died in the disassembly? The form is identical. The process was not continuous. If identity is continuity of consciousness, then you are the same person you were 10 years ago because there has been an unbroken chain of conscious experience connecting that person to this one. But you are unconscious every night, and there are conditions, deep anesthesia, certain comas, where the chain of consciousness is interrupted completely. Did you become a different person each morning? And what about the gaps in memory, the experiences you had that you cannot now access? If a continuous thread of conscious experience is what makes you you, what happens to your identity during the parts of your life you cannot remember? If identity is continuity of memory, then the problem becomes the Clive Waring problem. The man with no ability to form new memories is still recognizably himself. Memory cannot be the whole story. If identity is continuity of personality, then people who undergo dramatic personality changes through illness, through trauma, through religious conversion, through the ordinary processes of growth and time, have they become different people? Many of them report feeling exactly that. The person they were before the change feels like a stranger. The self that existed then does not feel like the self that exists now. Are they right? Did someone die and someone else take over? Or is the sense of discontinuity itself just another experience belonging to the same continuous person who was always going to have it? There is no answer that does not create a problem somewhere. Derek Parfit, the philosopher who spent his career on personal identity, argued that this is because we have been asking the wrong question. We keep asking whether a person at time A is the same person as a person at time B. We treat this as a binary question with a definite answer that we simply haven't found yet. But Parfit argued that the question itself is malformed, that personal identity over time is not a deep metaphysical fact about the universe. It's a way of talking, a useful fiction we employ because psychological continuity between successive stages of a person is usually close enough to warrant treating them as the same individual for practical and moral purposes. But there is no further fact beyond the psychological continuity itself. There is no soul or essence or spark that makes the person at time A numerically identical to the person at time B, regardless of what happens in between. This conclusion is liberating and terrifying in approximately equal measure. Liberating because it means that the self you are carrying around, the identity you're protecting and improving and worrying about, is not a fixed thing that can be permanently damaged or permanently lost. It's a process, a river, always changing, always moving, constituted by its flow rather than by any fixed substance. Terrifying because it means that the thing you most identify with, the continuous experiencing subject at the center of your life, may be a story you're telling rather than a thing that exists. The neuroscience has been slowly catching up to Parfit's philosophical position for 30 years. The default mode network, the brain's resting state system that activates when you are not focused on an external task, is the system most associated with self-referential thought, autobiographical memory, and the construction of the narrative self. What brain imaging research has shown is that this system is constructing something in real time. It's not reading off a fixed record of who you are. It's building the self continuously, moment to moment, from available materials, memories, current sensations, social context, expectations, the story that seems most coherent given what is available. The self is not discovered, it's made, and it's made fresh, at least partially, every time the default mode network fires. Which brings the Ship of Theseus problem home in a way the ancient Greeks could not have anticipated. The question was never just about ships, it was about the thing you call yourself, the identity you protect and defend across a lifetime, is something that persists or something that is continuously reconstructed. Whether the ship in the harbor is the original ship carefully preserved, or a new ship built every morning from yesterday's plans using today's lumber. The practical answer that most people live by is somewhere in the middle. You are continuous enough for the purposes of responsibility, relationship, and self-understanding. The person who made decisions 10 years ago is connected to you in ways that matter morally and psychologically. The person you will be in 10 years will be connected to you in the same way. But the philosophical answer, the one the problem forces if you follow it far enough, is that the connection is one of degree and not of kind. That the self is a river, and rivers don't have fixed identities. That the water flowing past this bank today is not the water that flowed past it yesterday and will not be the water that flows past it tomorrow. And the river is still the river. And you are still you. Just not in the way you thought.